Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon again as we bring you another episode of Together We Will Heal. My name is Lady Denakwa. I'm the Special Events Manager at Integral Care. The Central Texas Conference is run or organized by Integral Care, and the main focus is to educate the African American families and communities. I'm so sorry. About mental health, substance use, and intellectual disabilities, as well as the total well-being of African Americans. And with these conversations, we hope that you will all get the resources that you need to live your best lives. Today's forum is about our children. The topic or the title is Are the Kids Okay? Now, before we start, we have a few housekeeping rules that we would appreciate if you will help us, by obeying and making sure everything is okay. First of all, please keep your microphones muted at all times. If you need to speak, you may raise your virtual hand and I will unmute you and you can say something. There'll be time for interactions as well. So that's when obviously you will have to raise your hands and we'll call upon you to ask your questions or contribute. If you get emotional, because some of the topics that we talk about, comes a bit overwhelming for us, at that point, I will ask you to please turn off your video and handle your emotions privately. If need be, you can call the Integral Care hotline, and I'll put that line in the chat. Please know that this is being recorded and streaming live on Facebook as well, so please smile. Today's guest is Latrice Coleman. Ms. Latrice is a licensed professional counselor currently working as a school-based therapist with the Del Valley Victims of Crime Act team, working with families who are survivors of various crimes. Latrice has had training in long-term therapy, specializing in helping youth and families learn strategies to cope with youth substance abuse recovery, re-entry to school, and other school life events. Latrice is the eye movement desensitization and reprocessing trained to assist individuals with complex trauma and holds a prepare and enrich certification in that's for assessment for couples counseling. Latrice, I am so happy that you've agreed to share with us your knowledge and expertise. Please take over. Our kids okay?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Usually I'm not able to do presentations because I'm usually like doing therapy. So it's kind of weird being doing a presentation instead of like doing counseling with my kiddos. So I really appreciate your time today. Also a little bit more background about me. One of my last jobs I was working with were survivors of sex trafficking, which was a lot of our young and youth adults. And so I have a passion for kids and our teenagers, just kind of helping them get through a lot of different things. Today, it will be kind of like focused a lot on our kids, but I think the information today can be just used for parents, school officials, staff, because I think we all, like churchgoers, family, friends, we just need to know what the signs are. I think a lot of times we overlook some of our kids' behavior because it looks like typical kid behavior. Oh, they're just acting up. There's nothing wrong. So just know that hopefully today when you leave, you have a little bit to put in your pocket to kind of remember, to kind of reference to, to kind of help you be able to speak and talk to with kids. Because sometimes these topics are really hard to discuss with kids. And kids are not going to just flat out tell you how they're feeling unless you show that you do care, that there's some concern. And so hopefully I can help with that. Because I know talking about suicide and if you want to hurt yourself, those are hard topics, especially with little kids. And how I've wanted to kind of present today is kind of looking at how I might do an intake with a family just coming in and like things that I talk about with the family. Because a lot of times,
hold on.
Sorry? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I just heard something. Sorry about that. I'm going to take it as like how I might be working with a family that's just coming in, not sure if they want or interested in mental health services, because the school may have recommended mental health services. A lot of times we get the referrals from the school. And so families like, I don't know if my kid really needs mental health services. As we know, with a lot of families of color, they already are really apprehensive about mental health. And so one of the things, this is what I do, we would kind of talk about it and break things down. So this is also kind of sort of how like I just talk with my families. So we're family today. If you have questions, please stick your hand up, raise it. I might not be like a super expert, but I'm going to give you my professional opinion about it. It might differ from someone else's, but hopefully we can have a great interaction this afternoon. So why is this important? Let me bring up my PowerPoint because I didn't even bring it up. So let me share my screen. All right. All right. So our goals for today is to increase awareness around suicide and suicide prevention, gather tools to intervene and create safety, and reduce the stigma amount around mental health concerns. I don't know. I didn't really get, because maybe you can put it in the chat, and Lady J, you can tell me like who are we representing? Like who am I speaking with today? Who's my audience today? Just curious. Is it coming in the chat? Okay.
All right, we have QMHP, Safe Alliance, Community in Schools, Clergy, CHW Sendero Health, BBBS, Travis County Juvenile Victims Services,
Okay.
Advocate from NAMI, IDD Program Manager, Big Brothers, Big Sisters,
Oh, all right.
Integral KA, Travis County Children's Partnership, RISE program. So that's at the Gulf Coast Center. Oh, nice. Planned
Okay.
Living Assistance Network, Central County Services, Medical Services, MSW's Rio Grande Valley Empowerment Zone. Welcome.
Wow. Wow. I guess we have a really great variety. So I'm just curious. Do we have us just parents here today? Just parents that are kind of curious about mental health in children in school and what to look for.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
We have peer support workers here too.
Okay. That's great. That's great. Thank you all for sharing. It's always good to kind of know like my audience, who I'm working with, and see the different people that are in this fight together. So I feel like we're all in this together. So it's great to have further people in the village. Okay, there's some important terms that we're going to be discussing today. One is suicidal ideation. So this is like when kids are having thoughts about suicide. They may not be thinking about engaging, but there's some things probably that's going on in their life that have them have these particular thoughts. Suicidal behavior, like any behavior related to suicide, a lot of times we can see kids, and we'll talk a little bit, but you'll see them maybe not engaging the way they used to. You may see differences in their eating habits, socialization, also behavior, acting out in certain ways. So that's what we're going to look at as far as suicide behavior, self-harm and non-suicidal self-injury. So a lot of times I put this in the realm of sometimes we see kids with cutting, like experimenting with cutting. Sometimes also you might see kids using like rubber bands. There's also like sometimes you might also see like sniffing. They do a lot of the sniffing just to kind of see what kind of reaction they may get from doing it. And then we're talking about suicidal attempts, which are actual attempts of self-harm to the body. And then with the intention to actually die. So like a lot of times we'll see the kids try to do pills. One of the things that we're going to talk about is like firearm safety. If kids are aware of firearms in the home, a lot of times you may also see them, oops, this went too quick. There we go. We might also see, we talk about firearm safety, like putting your firearms on, like knives. If we have an intention that a kiddo may be suicidal or attempting to commit suicide, we talk about safety and what that looks like. So we'll discuss a little bit about that today. And then just, of course, what suicide is: self-direct injury behavior, intent that leads to death. So we'll be discussing a little bit about that as well today. So why is it so important that we're talking about this? So in October 2021, pediatrician declared that mental health crisis in youth in the US is at an all-time high. And that number probably has changed as we're in 2002 and going in 2003 with COVID and all the different things have come from kids being at home due to COVID. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 24. And then in the ER visits, we see an increase of this, like mental health reasons for going to the ER, are up to 24% since 2020. So this is just basically in Texas. This is not even in, like, let's say the US. So these are just numbers just here in Texas. And so one of the things that we're also going to look at is because these particular numbers are so high, but we don't really, these are just attempts. This is not even the number of kids who actually committed suicide. So on our next slide, you see the age range is from between 10 to 14 and 15 to 24. So those are the highest age range, and those are the age ranges that are increasing the most. Now, I've had kids under 10 thinking about suicide as well. And a lot of times when I'm doing my intakes with young kids, let's say here at Integral Care, we start at age 6, which is between the kindergarten, first grade age. And usually these children, when I ask in the intake, I was like, did you ever feel like hurting yourself? Or we asked it, do you feel like going to sleep and not waking up? And a lot of times parents are really surprised when kids like, yeah, because like when people talk about me or they say mean things to me, especially with kids that are being bullied around that particular age, you'll hear that them discussing that a lot or and talking about that and how that feels. And like a lot of times parents are like unaware their kids are feeling this way because they had no idea. And I think that's one of the things that we really want to talk about is like really paying attention to, like, with your kids, like, oh, she's just a shy person. Sometimes kids are not just a shy person. So it's really important that we look at the numbers because we also kind of forget about the many of these kids are just really, really hurting. And the bigger picture that we're looking at is like the number that reflects the death by suicide. So in 2018, I'm estimated 1.4 million suicide attempts. 1.4 million. That's a lot, but it doesn't even talk about the number of people who actually committed suicide, who actually died from suicide. That's just the attempts. And it amazes me at 1.4 million of these, people are thinking about suicide, and these are kids. And from that age range that I showed you, from the 10 to 24. And I think that's also the age that we have seen a lot of increased bullying, like lack of socialization skills. We're dealing with, especially in our climate here in Texas, with our trans community. Like a lot of different things, add to these particular numbers. And that's one of the things that we're also kind of take a look at. So what can you do? And so one of the things we want to look at is like increasing awareness of the risk factors and warning signs so we can effectively intervene when we see. So a lot of times, I know we're from that, I remember back in the day, like that old school mentality. If you see something that's not none of your business, keep on going. It doesn't concern you. Like we're not in that kind of age anymore, especially when it comes with our kids. If you see something that doesn't look right, let's talk about it. Let's do a little bit, especially at school. Let's talk about that. And I think that the biggest problem is that we want to create a setting that it's okay to talk about this, and that take away that stigmatism, like don't talk about suicide, because if you talk about suicide, have we heard that? then they're gonna want you put it in their head, and then they're gonna want to do it. So we want to really recognize interventions that can keep someone safe and make it sure and make it okay. We want to make it the norm. And so that's one of the things that we would want to focus on, is like talking about these things normal, that it's not unnormal to talk about these things, being able to talk about yourself and how you're feeling, and being able to advocate and tell someone what you need. So risk factors are just things that endure over a period of time that increases your risk of having thoughts of suicide. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen, but chances are higher that you could be more prone to, or thinking being able to want to commit suicide. So we're going to look at some of the warning signs, and then I want you to kind of think about what warning signs that you may have seen that you kind of looked past and said, oh, that's nothing, but really, it really was something. So we have some of the physical risk factors, which is genetics, family history, physical health conditions, and chronic pain. So like genetics, sometimes I struggle with genetics, even though I know it is a risk factor and it has been found. And then your family history. One of the things that we do on intakes is one of the things we want to know your family history. Do you have a history of being bipolar, depressed, anxiety? Because it does make you higher if you have it in your family, especially multiple people, especially like a brother, sister, mom, dad, have risk family history of like depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia. Those are some of the things that we will want to know. Physical health conditions. A lot of times, if you're like you have certain medical conditions that put you bedridden, or physical disabilities, or you're dealing with chronic pain, a lot of these risk factors also affect you in like many different ways. So how do you think these particular risk factors could increase risk? Like anyone in the chat, or you can say it out loud. Okay. Am I on this ship by myself?
Okay, I'll
Can
say
you repeat
something
the
because I don't
question?
want you to be out there by yourself.
Don't let me be on this ship by myself. Y'all can talk
I'm
to
gonna
me.
join the ship with you.
Join
You
the
know,
ship
you
with
were
me.
asking how these risk factors, such as, if you see it, you do it, and if you know that one of the, I think, subtle ways that family history can be important is that it's already in the background, and you know that it's an option. So, because so and so did it, it becomes something, and we don't talk about it openly, and there's shame with it. And so then the person who's has that family history doesn't want to talk about it, because we know Uncle so-and-so committed suicide and nobody talks about it. And I'm feeling that way and I can't talk about it. So it further increases the shame too. It's something we don't think about.
Thank you. Most definitely. I think, especially if y'all have experience working with people of color, that's like taboo. We don't tell our business. We're not going to tell anybody. I don't want anybody to know about these different things. And like, we're trying to change that narrative, like it's okay. But I know a lot of times, because majority of my families are people of color, what we deal with is that they deal with a lot of race-based and systematic trauma. So they really don't feel like even if they say something, they're going to be judged with it. And then we're going to put this label on me. I don't want that label. And so a lot of times when we're trying to get information and we're looking at these risk factors, they don't want to be that part of that statistic, and have that label follow even their kiddo around, because a lot of my parents like, is this going to be on their record when we kind of talk about diagnosis and looking at family history? Is this going to be on their record? That's the first thing they say, because they feel like it's going to be a negative connotation that's going to follow their kid all the way through school. So thank you. Other risk factors are environmental, so food instability, chronic financial stressors, housing instability, chronic stress, COVID, definitely one of our big ones. So these different environmental risk factors are important. Like for me, with the families that I work, I'm just always going to just come from what I know is like, I have a couple of families that are homeless. So them thinking about their mental health and trying to be safe is the least of they're thinking about. They're thinking about where I'm going to sleep, like how am I going to get food for my kids. And so these different factors play a role in like decisions they make. And sometimes we feel like we're desperate. And so when we don't have these certain things or our needs are not being met, sometimes we feel like it's better off not even being here. And a lot of my kids talk about what, Miss Latrice, when I'm hungry, I feel like maybe if my mama didn't have me to, take care or feed, then, my other sisters and brothers can be okay. And so these are very important things that sometimes we take for granted. Our environmental factors that really affect these kids and these families in a major way. Also, how we already kind of talked about it, touched a little bit on it. Mental health history, past experiences of trauma are like a major one, and that's one of the areas that I work with a lot when kiddos are dealing with, and also we deal with PTSD, trying to work and navigate through those different traumas. And a lot of times, if individuals don't get help for those traumas, it does lead to certain areas of thinking about suicide ideation or not being better off dead because they don't want to deal with the things that they experience, and kind of they relive it over and over and over again. I think one of my kiddos feel like, Miss Latrice, I don't want to dream anymore. It's like it hurts too much. And and like these really things that really impact kiddos and giving them the tools to find a way to kind of like process that. Mental health conditions, depression, we talked about, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, inconsistent medical health treatment, and then lack of access. One of the inconsistent medical health treatment, when I used to do my internship, one of the things that first come to mind is like when we help people that are homeless, a lot of times they won't come to get their mental health, they won't come for their therapy services or their medication. And so having that inconsistency, not having their meds, as well as the therapy that they can get for free, causes it causes individuals to make harmful decisions. So one of these things that we try to, is like meet them where they're at, like really going into the streets. And sometimes I think if you have not experienced street work and going, on the streets, it can be a little bit scary working and going to like, we got to go under the bridges. We got to talk to these families. We got to get to these kids. And so not having and following your medication directly with how you have is definitely a big factor, because I found a lot of my clients, especially my kiddos, how they can make really unsafe decisions because they're not taking their medication the way they need to take their medication. Other warning signs, unlike the risk factors, warning signs are present for like a shorter period of time, and then they kind of signify there's immediate risk or harm to self. I think one of the main things when we're looking at warning signs, we want to intervene immediately. If you see something and it can be very dangerous or unsafe for this person, we need to act immediately. And I think that's the most important part, is this immediately, because a lot of times we just keep going. I've seen it a lot, like, oh, they're okay, they'll be fine. Like ask, like a lot of times, even like parents speaking to parents, your kids want you to ask, but they're so afraid to tell you how they're feeling, especially if they know that you're going through something. They're trying to protect you. Our kiddos are always looking out for their parents. I know mine do. And if they know their parents are struggling or going through something, they're not going to talk about what they're going through because they don't want to add to the problem. And so one of the things we also, this is making, like I kind of asked my parents, like, make an open door for your kids to be able to talk with you, no matter what you're going through. It's like, and just keep on like letting them know, no matter what, I'm still here. Talk to me. So one of the warning signs that you see a lot of examples of, like talk. Should I just kill myself? I wish I was dead. I'm a burden. And then you see the behavior, the aggressiveness, We see substance abuse, especially in our teens. They're giving away possessions, things that mean a lot to them. You see mood changes in their sleep, changing in their eating, aggressiveness, lack of motivation, and sometimes they just withdraw, especially if you know your kiddo loves to sports, biking, even gaming, because like most of the kids are just doing a lot of gaming and they kind of stop all those things that they enjoy doing. Like that's a red flag to me. If you have a kid that loves eating and loves food, loves cooking, and they stop eating, oh, I'm not hungry, and oh, I just want to drink some water, like those are signs to me. If their sleep is inconsistent, like they want to sleep all the time, or they're just constantly up all night, those are red signs. Their aggressive behavior, if they're getting in a lot more fights than they do at school, if they're being argumentative with teachers, um, substance abuse, it seems like it'd be like something that you can see right away, but you can't, not unless you know what to look for. So a lot of times, I have parents like, how do their clothes smell? Who are they hanging out with? What are you doing? So like I always say, like, who's their new friends? Have they changed their friend sets? Like, what kind of music are they listening to now that they weren't listening to before? Like different things that we think like, oh, we're not gonna really pay attention. Pay attention to some of those things, because I want to look at their music, who their friends are, who they're hanging out with, um, what kind of movies are they watching, what kind of things are they looking on YouTube. One of the things I had to make my parents aware of, I forget what this bear's name is, but oh, what is that bear? Anyway, it's like this killer bear that, and it has these friends with the like killer bunny, and like I had my 6 and 7 year olds telling me about this, and like they're killing people, and like I'm like, does your mom know you're watching that? Oh yeah, she lets me watch it on YouTube. Like, what are these kids watching on YouTube that are also can be influencing a lot of different things that they're doing and the methods that they are going about? Because a lot of things they find on YouTube. So if anything with warning signs, let's look at this YouTube now and TikTok are definitely things I would say as far as necessary doesn't go into warning signs, but they contribute to a lot of their warning, the warning things that I picked up. This is just like personally, because um, just last year they had on TikTok how kiddos were making like suicide pacts and claiming to do really graphic stuff like on to kids and to individuals, and kids were following those different things. We kind of, and so the other thing that we're kind of look at that's really that kind of goes hand in hand with suicide is that overlaps is depression. So depression is a significant risk factor for suicide ideation because a lot of times they kind of go hand in hand. And they also display similar symptoms as well when we kind of look at the mood of suicide ideation and depression. So we're going to take a little deeper look into that now. Let's see. Okay. So some of the risk factors for depression that we kind of also kind of just talked about with suicide ideation is your change in sleep, change in eating, low motivation, fatigue, low energy, irritability, and then social withdrawal. Now, one of the reason why I kind of highlighted irritability, and then I want to look at low motivation, because a lot of times when we see these two things, we kind of say, oh, that's just typical kid behavior. And a lot of times it's more than typical kid behavior. And so I think that's why I think it's really hard to kind of like, when we look at warning signs and what to be mindful of when we looking at these different risk factors, because a lot of times we think it's just typical kid behavior. And so when I look at this, I'm like, is it, when we say that, are you sure it's typical kid behavior? Are we having a discussion with our kids? Are we asking them what's going on instead of like, oh, just go to your room because you don't want to do this? Okay, just go. And so like one of the things is like, we really want to have like conversations. We don't want to brush this off, especially if this low motivation and this irritability is consistent, like it's every day. That's not normal. So mm, we don't want this to be thought of as typical behavior. We want to look at it like this is my antennas up. Okay, like one day, okay, two, three, okay, no, something's wrong. So I just in that I want you to just constantly think about that. Yeah, these look like simple things like kids deal with all the time, but how extreme are they? Like, is it consistent? How long does this go on? Has it changed? Has it been going on for months? So really think about the time span that you're seeing all these different risk factors and this changing behavior. Is it consistent? How long is it? Those are the main things that I kind of like look for when I'm talking to a parent about all these different things that they may be discussing. I'm like, how long have you first, when did you first notice it? Treatment for depression usually helps within 4 to 6 weeks. It includes therapy, medication. Teams also benefit like from both. I depending on what it is, depression and the therapy and medication does really do a great job. One of the things that we do if we're working with an individual that has depression, we do like a scale every time we have a therapy session to gauge the level of the depression. Whether is it mild, is it severe? And if we come more on the severe side, we want to put other additional interventions that can be included. So like safety planning, you know, who do you call when you're feeling this way? Just different things when you're kind of dealing with depression and treatment. I always say also include safety planning, which I should have put in there, like, because that's important. Safety planning is important, especially if someone is having a depression diagnosis. We want to plan, like if you're feeling this way, if you're starting to feel suicidal, let's have a plan in place so we can help you navigate this. So you know you're not like, I wasn't on that ship by myself and somebody saved me after that ship. Like we want to make sure that you're saved. I always say when we're working with our kids in the school, it takes a village. We're part of this village and we're helping. If we see something, let me tell somebody about that. We want to work as a whole unit because it takes a village to really help our kids navigate through the different things and transitions that they go to. So now we come to like, what is your role? What do we like? How can you help? How can you create a safe environment in which the kids can feel comfortable talking and engaging with you? And I think anyone can do this. So first thing, what can I do? Look for changes. What are the warning signs? What are the risk factors? Check in with the kiddo. Ask direct questions. Like kids are like open books, but they're not gonna say anything unless you start the conversation, unless you express your concern, which is the next point. If you don't, they're not gonna say it. They're gonna keep it in. And a lot of times how I like to go with with kids, like what do they like doing? You want to draw, you want to color, and a lot of times like, oh, I've been noticing you've been kind of sad lately. Is anything happen? Is anything wrong? And like just starting a conversation like that. Like, I saw you feeling sad lately. I seen you start playing with your best friend. Did you and your best friend have a fight? Um, and the main thing is like say something, either parent, school counselor, etc., staff, anybody can say something. Kids are just looking for reassurance that people care, that you're willing and wanting to help. And that's the main thing. Like if they don't feel like you care about who they are or you're really showing genuine concern of their well-being, they're not going to talk. They're just going to shut down quick. And so I always say, especially if we're going into homes or we're going into the schools, like my first thing is like, what do you know that these kids like to do? Like, what is one of the things that you see? Are they wearing something like an anime shirt that like has Naruto on it? Oh, you like anime? I like anime. Get them engaged in talking with you in something that they like. Um, understand that it may not work the first time, but like if you just keep trying, don't give up. Don't give up. because they're gonna turn you down a couple times. I get shut down a lot, but I keep coming. I'm consistent. I was like, okay, you may not talk to me today, but I'm hoping you talk to me tomorrow. And they're like, no, Mr. Latrice, I'm not talking to you. I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back tomorrow then. All right. And so I keep coming and coming and like, okay, Mr. Latrice, you're getting on my nerves. Let's talk. Like, I'm okay with that. Talk to your kids. I mean, they're wanting to call. Like, even if you say, oh, you're getting on my nerves, mom, you're getting on my nerves, that's okay. Because I'd rather get on their nerves and then they not know that I'm there, that I don't care. Of course, if it's an emergency, call 911, the crisis line, or go to the hospital. So, how to ask about mental health? Just like kind of like I've been like saying, well, I want you to listen. Empathy. Empathy is the key. Like concern, care, like treat me like a human. That's it. Like something is so simple. Treat me like a human. Questions to ask about areas of in their life, like how are things going at school? How's things at home? How are things with your friends? I think one of the other things that we forget is that like peer to peer are like the best. And I think one of the things that we forget is like, even though you feel like you're a kid, you can still help your friend. So if we, like, and I think one of the things that kids deal with the most is if their friend tells them, I feel like killing myself, I'm killing myself, but don't tell anybody. That friend feels like they're not going to be a good friend if they snitch. That's what my kids say. I'm not snitching. If I snitch, then I'm not a good friend. But I always tell them, like, if you don't snitch, think about what the alternative could be. If you don't snitch, you can lose your friend. Would you rather snitch and your friend be mad at you a little bit? Or would you just rather lose your friend altogether? And so a lot of times that's how I talk to my kids. I was like, like I tell one of the things that we always talk about is like, Miss Latrice is always going to snitch if I think that you're going to be a danger to yourself or someone else, or if I think somebody else is hurting you. Miss Latrice is snitching. And they look at me as like, then Miss Latrice, I ain't telling you anything. I was like, you know what? It's your right to not to tell me anything, but my job is to make sure that you're safe. And if I feel like you're not safe, I'm gonna have to snitch. It's not that doesn't mean that I'm trying to be mean to you. Doesn't mean that I don't like you or care about you. It means that I have your best interest in heart and I want to make sure that you're safe and that if I'm able to help you, that I can make sure that you can be taken care of. And they're like, okay. So she's like, are we okay with that? He's like, okay. So, things like that, like sometimes you got to get that language on their level. And that's what they always talk about snitches. That's the first thing they say. So I don't know with the kids that you're working with, if snitching always comes, but that's always what they tell me. Like, Miss Trees, don't you be snitching. I was like, I know you be talking to my mama. That's one of the things they always tell me. But I was like, only when I need to tell your mama something that can help you. They're like, okay, did it help you? They're like, yeah. But that's one of the things that I want you to kind of like think about, like get on their level in the conversation. Like sometimes it doesn't take big words to show care. Like playing with Legos. Like even my teenagers love Legos. Playing Uno and having a conversation and talking, so they have a way to be able to express themselves and not feeling like they're the center of attention. Just a way to like drawing or coloring. A lot of times they like to draw and color their emotions that they're feeling without even having to say verbal. I was like, oh, this picture looks kind of dark. Is that how you kind of feeling inside? Like, how can I help you not feel that way anymore? So just different things like that. Other questions, do you feel really worried? How often? What is it like? Do you feel really sad? How often? What is it like? Just simple questions. And I think a lot of times our kids are really wanting help. They just don't know how to go about asking for help. They're afraid that they'll be shamed about asking for help or feeling the way that they're feeling. And asking these direct questions with them helps. And when you're dealing with suicide ideation or just, you have to be direct. You can't really beat around the bush. And I think one of the things is that it's so uncomfortable to talk about. Like, how do you ask somebody, do they feel like killing themselves or hurting themselves? That's hard, but you have to have a direct question. So like right here, are you thinking about hurting yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? And sometimes my kids' eyes get really, really big. You're like, no, miss. I was like, well, I just have to ask you because sometimes I see that you're looking kind of sad and I just be worried about you. So I just want to make sure that you're okay. And I was like, if you're not okay and you are feeling that way, it's okay. Because Miss Latrice is here to help you. And like if you can't come to Miss Latrice, like let's think about who else can you go to? And they're like, my mom, like I was like, is there a teacher here at school that you like? And they're like, coach. And so that opens up dialogue. We want to talk about this like with no judgment, like it's open, that it's okay to talk about sometimes not feeling like being here on this earth. We all sometimes have those thoughts. Adults have those thoughts too. So making this really common and simple. Like, oh, okay. Like he said, does my mom sometimes maybe you why don't you ask her? Maybe sometimes your mom may have felt like that, but she had somebody to talk to and she wants you to come to her and talk about it. Or like even your dad might want you to, want you to come to him and talk about it too. And so just making it just really conversational, like it's okay. Just like if you like you're just talking about cake, like what's your favorite cake? Like treat it like that, because even though it's more severe than just like talking about your favorite cake, but making it so light that they feel okay discussing it, that's our main goal. We don't want it to feel heavy, like it's taboo to talk about it. Shh, don't tell anybody, let's keep it a secret. We want them to feel like it's okay and be open to discuss all these things. So so it says listen without judgment. So like right here, don't try to persuade them to feel better. Like I always tell my kids, your feelings are your feeling. I'm not going to take that away. If you're feeling sad, I'm going to respect that you're feeling sad. I'm not going to say no, you don't feel sad. You're telling me you're feeling sad, so I'm going to respect that. I'm not going to change that. All I'm wanting to know is how can I help you feel better? Like how can I help you while you're sad? Um, because if you can't validate their experience and what they're feeling, then you're just, it's like, to be really, it's almost like a slap in the face to them. It's like you don't acknowledge how I'm feeling, so you really don't care. You're just worried about how you feel and how this is making you feel. Because talking about suicide can make the other person feel very uncomfortable. It's icky. It's like not the best conversation you want to have with a kiddo. It can be very uncomfortable. It can get you out your comfort zone. And so that's why we struggle in this area. But if you're making that so icky and you start asking these questions, it gets easier and easier to discuss with your kiddos. And then if they see you struggling, they're like, well, you can't even talk to me about it. Why you want me to talk to you about how I'm feeling? Because you can't even talk to me. You nervous. Your hands are sweaty. You're like, why am I going to talk to you? I don't want to talk to you. So understanding those things and those aspects is important. And I kind of spoke on it before, like encourage you to notice their changes in their friends. Tell an adult. When you hear something, reach out. I think we're starting to get a little bit better, but I also think we're in this I don't know what to say, way of like, we're kind of also too scared. Like if we say something, it's gonna have a bad effect on us. Like we're gonna get in trouble for saying something. So like, we don't want to reach out. We don't want to say anything. I think the slippery slope in school sometimes and working with kids is, yes, we're mandated reporters and we're talking about things. So like kids sometimes also feel like if we say something, then CPS is going to come and they're going to take me away from my mom. If they know that I might be trying to hurt myself, I don't want them to call CPS and take me from my home. So so like explaining that with, talking to kids about like, CPS is not coming because you're trying to hurt yourself. CPS will come as like your mom is trying to hurt you or someone in your home is trying to hurt you and your mom's not protecting you. Like really explaining different things. Like, because like one of my kids, they're like, Miss Latrice, is CPS going to come if I tell you this? I was like, CPS is not coming. Why do you think CPS is going to come? It's like, well, my mama said when we talk about things about hurting ourselves or like they might come and get us. And I don't want, and there are things like, I don't want to be taken from my mom. So this also comes back into play when you're talking about with your kids or working with families of color. Like, this is the part of that race-based trauma, that systematic trauma that families and kiddos go through, that also prevents them from wanting to share. So why that's also why it's super, super important that we kind of also pick up on a lot of the warning signs and the risk factors with these kiddos, because of different things, because these experiences reflect on why they don't say anything, why they don't want to talk about how they're feeling, or they won't engage in someone when they need help. And so just keep that on your radar when discussing that with kids. Let's see. Helpline information, our integral care helpline number, our text line number. Of course, I put the new 988 suicide hotline number, and that's available. One of the cool things that I found out is, if you are in Central Texas, like in the Austin and surrounding area, because that's where we're located, when you dial 988, those calls actually get directed to integral care, because we're part of the suicide hotline number. So you're speaking to someone, like if someone's in Austin, they're speaking to someone here locally that can help them navigate and provide information to services. So it gets connected, I think, depending on different states and stuff, but like I know for sure here in Austin, integral care takes a lot of suicide hotline numbers if those numbers are coming from the central area of Austin. So the Pflugerville, Manor, Taylor, Hayes, probably also San Marcos, and maybe San Antonio, but it connects a lot of those different numbers come to integral care here in Texas. And so, that's it. Thoughts, questions? I love to hear. We have I left kind of like some time to ask any questions you may have. Please do so.
Thank you, Latrice. And indeed, I've got 3 questions from
Okay.
attendees. The first one is there a correlation between a kid's friends self-harming and that child beginning to self-harm?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time? I heard.
Yes, is there a correlation between a kid's friends? So one child's friend is harming him or herself, and that child himself wanting to do same.
Okay, so make sure I'm understanding. So a brother, say a brother and sister. So the brother is self-harming, but the sister's not at the moment, but they want to engage in self-harming too.
I guess so, yes.
Is that, am I
So they are
understanding that question?
friends.
But they're
Let's
friends.
say you and I are friends. I'm
Friends, okay.
self-harming. And is there a possibility that you could start doing it just because your friend is doing it?
Yes, most definitely, because a lot of times if you're close with your friends can easily persuade you to do what they do. But a lot of times also, but it also, because they're thinking like they're a group, we're friends, we do these things together. But a lot of times, depending on that, a lot of times it's also no, because it's all depending on the mindset of the kid and how they feel about themselves. And like they're understanding like, oh, this is not right. I don't like how this feels. And so sometimes kids, like if they understand, like, I don't like how this feels, I'm not going to do this. They'll tell their friend, I don't want to do this. And like sometimes I don't think you should either. And so I have conversations with my kids about self-harm and like how it feels and like, why, if you feel like you want to do that, like come talk to me. Let's talk about it. How can we make it easy to talk about it?
Thank you. Next question. This one says, please help us understand why a 6-year-old will want to take their life.
Oh, that's a great question. So, as you know, kids get bullied. One of the biggest things with my 6-year-olds that I've had that said that they want to hurt themselves and never wake up is being bullied. And bullying is really, really high with younger kids, very much so. Kids deal with self-identification, like self-esteem issues, even at 6. You have to realize our kids are inundated with so much on TV, how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to dress, how your hair is supposed to look. So what if my mom can't afford to do my hair and I'm coming to school and all these kids are making fun of me? Or I can't afford like Jordans and nice clothes like the other kids are, and kids are making fun of me what I wear. What if I accidentally wet my pants and they saw? These things have effect on kids, and they react and count and like, I don't want to be here. I don't love myself. And so one of the things I work with is self-esteem, understanding who they are, and understanding their power. Any kid that I work with, even if dealing with trauma, I'm working on affirmations and self identity and loving themselves first. Because if you don't have that as a foundation, you can't move forward. I noticed that with my kids. So that worked a lot. Affirmations and self-worth is like the key in a lot of these instances and working with our kids in self-harm. Was it another question?
Yes, third
Mhm.
question. This one says, what coping skills can parents teach their children so they can better manage their emotions?
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the things I always tell parents, like, look, even as adults, we deal with this. Kids are not taught anger management, right? We're not taught that in school. We're not taught how to handle our emotions. So like there's adults that don't know how to handle their emotions or their anger. So one of the things, the three things that I always tell my kids when they're talking about anger, I always tell them, it's okay to be mad. Miss Latrice, it's okay with you being mad. It's an emotion, that's how you're feeling. But I want you to do three things. One, don't hurt others, don't hurt yourself, and don't destroy property. So if you don't do those three things, we're good. Your anger is okay. I want you to be able to calm down. Like a lot of times, depending how old the kid is, a lot of times I give them stress balls. I help them learn how to breathe. Sometimes breathing doesn't help with kids. Here at school, what we do is like when you're feeling anger, and you can do it the same thing at home, let's go to a safe zone so you can calm down. So like you, if your kiddo says, Mom, I'm not feeling good, I'm mad right now, I was like, okay, let's go to your safe zone. Go to your safe zone at home. You can make safe zones at home. And so give you time to calm down. And in his safe zone, there might be something that they enjoy doing, whether it be coloring, drawing, playing with some Legos to help them calm down. And during that time, nobody in the house messes with them. Leave them alone. They said they need their space. Give them time to calm down. So I use that a lot at home, and it works really good at home with kiddos. Other things that, depending on, are they at school or are they at home? A lot of times we'll be thinking about coping skills, because my coping skills are different depending at home and at school. At school, we have a safe zone. Sometimes they have a chance to walk out and like have somebody and go outside the door to calm down. Also at home, I like, let's do a chore to calm down. Do we need to go outside? Like, what do we need to do to help you calm down? What do you need the most to help you calm down? So before they get to that point, I always have a conversation, and we do with parents. What can you do at home to help you calm down? What would you need from mom or dad or sister or brother to help you when you're feeling this way? And so they usually tell us, I need this. So whatever the kids say that they need, that's what we try to utilize in the home. So usually the kids know what they need. And sometimes we might give them examples like, well, you said you like playing with this. Would this help you calm down? And they'd be like, yeah, that would. And so we go that route.
All right. Those are the questions that I received through the chat. But I have a question. Maybe that will be
Yes.
the last one.
Uh-huh.
Walk us through the process of getting help for children who might be experiencing any mental health issue.
Okay. So integral care. Oh, did we freeze? Did I freeze?
You
Oh,
froze,
oh
but I can
no.
hear
Yeah.
you.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm
good.
back. Okay. So with integral care, well, I'm one of the school-based therapists. So we have services here in Austin. So at Del Valley, Pflugerville, Manor, and like we're at East Austin Prep. We're there. So it's all simple as something as them going to the counselor, asking for a referral, and they can send a referral. If you're not in the school, Integral Care has a Riverside clinic that we do see kids at various locations that they can call the hotline number and get connected to setting up an appointment for services for mental health. I think depending on what area you live in, I think there's certain mental health services within the area. One of the things that I also use, each like particular city in the state of Texas have like a child, I call like a child Inc. that has various resources of child mental health services in the area that provide for free or no cost, free or reduced cost.
Like
And
the
a lot of
Child Guidance Center.
like, yeah, like the Child Guidance Center. So I have like I think from the Child Guidance Center, I got this this big PDF called Child Inc. And it lists all child resources that help children for free or reduced cost. A lot of times, the majority of the kids we work with have Medicaid. So a lot of times Medicaid is taken at all these different areas too, as well for services. One of the things I did not put in the presentation, because that's a presentation in itself, is a lot of times kids act up in class because of a learning disability. So a lot of times, if they feel like they're stupid and they can't read or they can't understand certain writing, or they may have dyslexia, but they haven't been diagnosed with it or have been tested for that yet, behavior changes can also occur there as well. I think a lot of times those two things correlate with each other a lot that I've seen working in the school system. And one of the things I always encourage my parents to advocate is request for testing. So a parent can request for testing. You can just write, it can be as simple as writing a note and getting it to the principal, or finding the principal's name and writing like, I'm concerned about my kid and want them to be tested, and they can be tested, and the school will have to test them. The school will have 30 to 45 days to complete the assessment, and it's free. And so that can also give them assistance to get like SPED, what they call special education assistance, and also in-class additional assistance. A lot of times parents don't know that. Schools don't advertise that they can get tested for dyslexia. They can get tested for ADHD. They can get tested for, what is it? Any developmental disorders, autism. All you have to do is ask. And as long as it's not at the end of the year, like May, because they can't do their testing. But if you're in the year and they have 30 to 45 days to complete it, you can get that testing done for your child.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
So what do you recommend for, the resources that are available in the community if a waiting list exists, or a family reaches out to an organization, there's a waiting list? What are your recommendations around that?
That is the toughest thing, because like mental health is a big topic now. Man. So I do know right now, currently, depending where they're located, I know Integral Care currently does not have a wait list. Currently, it may have changed with our kiddos, but that's a hard one because there's really not many resources, not unless they're, and like I never recommend too many virtual sessions for kids, because a lot of times kids need one-on-one, face-to-face, and it's hard for them to focus virtually. So there might be some virtual avenues to go, but I wouldn't recommend for younger kids virtually, because their attention span is maybe 20 minutes, if that. That I've worked, because I've done some virtual stuff with my younger kids, and usually if I do a virtual session with, say, first, second, pre-K, it's at least it might be 20 minutes. It's just not enough resources out there for mental health, especially if you're trying to get free or reduce. If you have now found, if you do have Medicaid, there are resources available, and they will pay, and you can go to someone. But if you're waiting for free, they're with long waiting lists on various organizations.
Thank you for that. I have a follow-up question to that. So if
Yes.
there is a waiting list with an organization and a student or a child needs urgent attention, how do you convince the organization to kind of triage the situation?
So usually
and to possibly from their triage determine the urgency of the student needing support that you're bringing to them?
So if it's that urgent, so one or two things kind of happens. So on those urgent things, especially if it's like they're suicidal kind of urgent.
Yeah, it could be suicidal or.
Okay. Yeah. So usually we have MCOT, which is part of us. We can call MCOT. They can do an evaluation. They would take kiddo either to Dale or the Austin State Hospital that has a children ward for those type of cases. So that can be immediate. So like anytime, if it's anything that immediate, you can call our NCOP number, even our 24/7 number, and get NCOP out for evaluation. Though they will come out and evaluate the kiddo, and they feel like they need to take them to the hospital, they can be evaluated within the hospital. They usually try to keep a kid, they can keep a kid from, depending, 3 to 10 days, depending on the severity. They can get medication, they get therapy within there, they get evaluated, and then they'll leave with a plan. So in those cases, those kind of cases, that is available. But if you're trying to think, if it's just regular wait list for therapy, because you for like child behavior, ADHD, those wait lists, yeah, and then you're stuck with that particular wait list. But if it's something like more urgent, those are the kind of like steps you can go to be get assistance. And there's a lot of there's like 3 to 4 hospitals, maybe 5, that can take urgent care like that.
Thank you.
And they take Medicaid. All of them do. You're welcome.
All right, any more questions, anyone? Okay, it is 2:31. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending this forum. Latrice, I appreciate you spending time with us this afternoon. And for everyone else out here, if you want to hear more of these conversations, please join us every month on the 3rd Wednesday at 1:30 to 2:30. And please consider attending our conference in February 2023. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.